We are up to our last division, the defending champions division. The Pacific division is actually kind of stacked. I know I said the Atlantic division may be the best in the NBA. After further review, I think this one actually takes the cake. The defending champion Warriors, the 64-win Suns, the Clippers with a returning Kawhi Leonard, and potentially the best supporting cast in the entire NBA, the injury-prone Lakers with a long offseason, but reloaded with better, younger role players, head the division with talent. Plus, you have a scrappy bottom feeder with the Kings that are trying everything they can to sabotage their rebuild. Welcome to AJM in the AM. I am Anthony Mero with episode 29. The Golden State Warriors aren't just the gold standard for the Pacific Division. They aren't even just the gold standard for the NBA. They are the gold standard for the entire decade of the 2010s and now the 2020s. The stretched floor, switch everything, off-ball movement, three-point layups and free throws, point forward, undersized game was revolutionized by the Steph Curry Warriors. They built this new era. Their mix of agile and talented youngsters, good vets, past first, second, and third big men, and Stephen Curry has been a huge formula for success. Having just won a championship, some of their rotation pieces did leave for bigger paydays elsewhere. Gary Payton Jr., Juan Toscano-Anderson, and Otto Porter Jr. are now with the Blazers, the Lakers, and the Raptors respectively. Nemanja Bjelica and Warrior fan favorite Andre Iguodala are now free agents. Those are some massive holes to fill, and the Warriors did do their best to fill them by adding JaMychal Green and Dante DiVincenzo. Their roster beyond that, though, is still stacked. You have Steph, Clay, Dre, and now Andrew Wiggins at the tip of this spear. The version of Wiggins we saw in the postseason should cover up a lot of the drop-off with age and injuries that we recently saw from Klay Thompson and especially Draymond Green. Green saw a serious fall in his play this postseason. Even his usual defensive mastery seemed to take a step back. And that's not to say he's a bad defender. He was still excellent, but he just seemed to be an easier target for opposing teams. Wiggins emerged as a phenomenal option to defend an opponent's best player while still crashing the glass, playing off ball, draining timely threes, and scoring on his own. Just an incredible level of growth from just his second playoff run. Stephen Curry obviously is still a top 3 player in the NBA. He's coming off of one of the best playoff performances and his best playoff performance overall that saw him dominate throughout, even against the Celtics, who had the Defensive Player of the Year and the league's top team defense. He's one of the top 10 to 12 best players to ever grace the hardwood and probably one of the top 3 most important players to basketball. Alongside his on-court brilliance, he's probably the best team leader we've seen since Tim Duncan. We've seen him in bad situations and he remains positive and exudes great energy. And in good ones, he remains the same with that positive demeanor. Despite the aging core the Warriors have, they still have some growth potential to get better, to plug up those holes created by their offseason departures. With Jordan Poole, Jonathan Kuminga, and James Wiseman being so young, there's a ton of potential within them. They can do more than just fill those gaps, potentially even overloading them and making this team hit a new level. This Warriors team may pace the entire NBA, but injuries should not be ruled out. Clay is entering his first full season since his ACL and Achilles tears. His game has shown the effects of those injuries, playing more off-ball as a spot-up threat and in the pick and roll as opposed to its off-ball screen action and in transition. But he is such a historically great shooter that it didn't affect his numbers as much. Plus, the Warrior style could make him the best spot-up shooter in the NBA. But that still does show a level of limitation that he didn't have before. Curry has been mostly durable throughout his career outside of 2020's broken hand and his 2011 ankle issues, but he has seen more rest and nagging injuries that make him miss a few games over the last few seasons. I know he has a baby face, but he still turns 35 in March, so you can probably pencil him in to miss about 20 games this year. And as intriguing of a prospect as James Wiseman is, he's only played 39 games of potential 154 regular season games, and that doesn't include the last 22 games of the playoffs. That's not a good look, but hopefully a full season of recovery, watching this team win without him, and the hunger that should instill motivates him to buck these problems. This team is built to win now, tomorrow, and the day after that. They just need to manage their health, which they will. The ceiling for the Dubs is 66-16, a floor of 55-27, but I think they'll go 59-23. It feels weird to say, but the Phoenix Suns window is rapidly closing. They hit a phenomenal stride in the 2021 postseason into last year, from finals run to a dominant 64-win season with their core four of Devin Booker, CP3, DeAndre Ayton, and Mikal Bridges. They do have some solid rotation pieces too to fill out the roster. People like Cam Johnson, just a lights-out shooter. Whenever he puts it up, even with the smallest amount of daylight, it feels like a sure thing. Jay Crowder, a veteran 3-and-D guy. Dario Saric, who was a solid stretch big, although he was rehabbing a torn ACL last year. The core of this team remains mostly untouched from their last two rather successful campaigns. But CP3 diminished harshly with his age. When he turned 37 against the Mavs, his game just disappeared into the ether. Just look at his playoff stats before his birthday and after. May 4th, 36 years old, 28 points, 8 assists, plus 19 plus minus. May 6th, his birthday, 12 points, 4 assists, 7 turnovers. And every subsequent game was also bad, leading to a second-round upset to the Mavs. The Suns desperately need another playmaker to fill in for CP3 as he ages out. And as well as Cam Payne has been playing the last few years, he can't fill those shoes alone. If this team wants to keep their title contention window open, there needs to be consistent effort to unlock DeAndre Ayton and let Mikal Bridges take another step up. Booker may be at his ceiling already as a scorer. His scoring stats have been roughly the same the last 4 years. He needs to be a better playmaker, which he has shown flashes of doing. And he's already an improved defender, posting his first positive box plus minus of his career for defense. It's weird to say since he's been in the league for such a long time, but Booker's only 25 years old. He turns 26 in October. Mikal Bridges has some more to offer, potentially as an on-ball creator or self-initiator of offense. But there are some serious layers to the Suns' future locked to Ayton getting more post touches to either become an elite post scorer or an improved post passer. Even so, this Suns team should still be very competitive this season, potentially even with a rapidly aging Chris Paul. They're the second best team here. I don't think they will win over 60 games again. Injuries may start to mount after 2 longer postseason runs with those young legs, but the Suns' ceiling is 58-24, a floor of 50-32, and I have them going 55-27. If you like this content, please hit the subscribe button to join the Ant Colony and hit the like button to push us up that YouTube algorithm. The Los Angeles Clippers are a pretty dope team. They pillaged Norman Powell and Robert Covington from my Blazers last year, but they still got bounced from the play-in tournament. Mostly because the Pelicans and the Wolves were really hot at the right time, and also because they were missing Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi is about as pure a baller as you can get. He's one of the best players the NBA has ever seen. His offensive and defensive abilities are amongst the very best in today's league and basically ever. And while his leadership and team building things leave something major to be desired, he is still a phenomenal talent. In 2021, the Clippers were 4th in the West at 47-25. It was a shortened season. With Kawhi, they were 36-16. Without him, 11-9, which is about par for the course for their season last year, being 42-40. And that's with Paul George also missing a huge chunk of the season. The Clippers are well coached. They have multiple lineups and different ways to attack other teams' weaknesses. They have one of the deepest rosters in the league, and while they lack some size now by letting Isaiah Hartenstein go to the Knicks, they still have Ivica Zubac and brought on board John Wall for basically nothing. This team is very deep at full strength, but that's the key for them. Paul George and Kawhi Leonard have been injury-riddled since joining the Clippers. John Wall has basically been out of commission since 2017. And while I think they can probably sustain an injury or two to some role players, maybe even be hyper-competitive without Paul George or without Kawhi Leonard, they can't deal with the amount of time that will be missed by Kawhi, by Paul George, and other players on their roster. If everyone is healthy, the Clippers here will raise hell out west. But we know Kawhi is going to miss time. Even if he's not exactly hurt, he's not more dedicated to the Clippers organization than he is to his own well-being. Which is annoying, but fair. If I'm sick or you're sick, we more than likely are not going to go to work either. Why should he? That's their only real limiter. Talent is no issue. Size, they have it. They have some of the best perimeter defenders the league has to offer at the guard and forward spots. Lights out shooting? Check. Good coaching? Check. Ty Lue is an NBA champion and isn't afraid to shake things up. Playmaking? Check. This team is built to be elite. They can easily win 65 games if everyone is healthy. But will they be healthy? Last year, only 6 players played more than 60 games, all of them being rotation pieces and Reggie Jackson. Kawhi didn't suit up once, and Paul George only played 31 games. Their floor is still incredibly high despite their high-profile players' injury histories at 45 and 37, but I have them going 51 and 31. As positive as I've been about almost every single team, it's impossible to say the biggest pieces here will play for the entire season. The Los Angeles Lakers dismantled their team twice in 4 years. Trading all of their young prospects and draft capital for Anthony Davis led to a title run in 2020. You could say it was worth it, but then they were destroyed by injuries in 2021. It wasn't for lack of ability. When LeBron James played in 2021, the Lakers were 30 and 15. They were 12 and 5 without him, including 17 and 23 with Anthony Davis. LeBron, despite being old, what is it now, year 19, is still an absolutely massive part of the Lakers' offensive creation. They dismantled their roster to plug in some insurance for this past year by trading for Westbrook instead of adding better depth pieces, leading to a horrible 33 and 49 season. They were bad offensively. They were equally bad defensively. The roster looked old, they looked unathletic, and just bad. There's been a proven formula for success around LeBron James. Give him good defenders that shoot threes at a high clip, and it leads to long playoff runs. Well, last year they had one person, DJ Augustine, a mid-season pickup, shoot above 40% from deep. Malik Monk was one of the few bright spots for LA, but now he's on the Kings. The Lakers have had a long offseason with a ton of rest for their two stars. They fired Frank Vogel, an unfair scapegoat for their horrible season. He's a defensive coach that was given bad defensive pieces, but they did bring on beloved NBA figure Darvin Ham. They have tried to undo their roster mistakes from last year. They traded for Pat Bev, they signed Thomas Bryant and Lonnie Walker. It adds some depth and decent pieces defensively, but it doesn't really answer their shooting woes unless these players have spent all offseason just yeeting threes. They also returned Dennis Schroeder, who missed out on an $84 million payday for basically 2 veteran minimums with a bad bet on himself. The Lakers team this year looks better than what they looked like last year, but Westbrook still doesn't fit. Although to his credit, he has been practicing his corner threes, which is the lone spot he shot well from on the floor. And he was also available last year, unlike LeBron and AD. With LeBron entering year 20, the Lakers need to stop being married to their 2027 and 2029 first-round picks. There have been rumors for trade packages with the Pacers for Buddy Hield and Miles Turner, and with the Jazz around Bojan Bogdanovic, Mike Conley, and Jordan Clarkson, potentially around those picks, and obviously Westbrook's massive contract. But the Lakers need health, luck, and an aggressive Anthony Davis more than moving Westbrook for pieces. AD and LeBron basically carried the Lakers through the bubble with only KCP and Kuzma through 21 playoff games averaging more than 10 points per game. The roster just fit their roles well. They played hard-nosed defense, they hit their threes, they crashed the glass, while LeBron and AD were just overwhelming opponents. But Anthony Davis has looked nothing like that player since. The Lakers, being tied to unreliable health and an oddly constructed roster, have a ceiling of 52 and 30 if everyone is healthy and AD can actually take the reins, and a floor of 35 and 47. Personally, I can never count LeBron out, plus I'm pretty sure Westbrook is going to be traded after the Schroeder signing, so I think the Lakers have a strong bounce-back season and they finish 49 and 33. I wish I knew what was happening in Sacramento. They had a fantastic young player in Tyrese Halliburton, and they flipped him to the Pacers for Domantas Sabonis, which would seem like a win-now move, except they were equally bad with him, going 10 and 16 after the trade, 5 and 10 with him in the lineup before he suffered a knee injury. Plus, this hampered their spacing horribly, with both Fox and Sabonis being poor perimeter shooters. But they did have some flashes of awesome. Even with their obvious limitations, they are both very talented players, and it showed. I do like the off-season addition for the Kings and Malik Monk. Definitely adds a boost to their three-point shooting and offensive versatility. The additions of Kevin Huerter and KZ Okpala add some prospects to build around. Huerter especially is a rotation player today who can space the floor a bit better with the lineups featuring both Sabonis and Fox. They drafted Keegan Murray at 4, which surprised a lot of people in the moment, being taken over Jaden Ivey. But Murray showed why he was picked ahead during Summer League. He has a brilliant three-point game. He can score off the dribble, and his athleticism and size can create mismatches. Murray has a bright future if this is what his foundation looks like. The concerns, though, should be that while there is some young talent here, their older stars in Fox and Sabonis no longer fit their timetable, which is why trading Halliburton was so head-scratching. They seem to be restarting their rebuild, but got antsy for win now talent with a win next week roster. It made no sense. Maybe they can find a suitable trade partner for both 24, almost 25-year-old Fox and 26-year-old Sabonis, or they can ride out this season and look for trade partners next year with Sabonis on an expiring contract. Maybe keep Fox to make a fun backcourt duo with Murray. I don't know. It's a puzzling situation for the Kings. You can expect Harrison Barnes to be on the trade market with this being the last year of his contract, but the fact that this conversation can kind of lead into contract mobility and trades shows what kind of team this is. They will be competitive. The Kings, despite being bad, play hard every night, and they have players that can win games. Murray makes them exciting. Fox and Sabonis will win some games, but they probably won't be in the play-in tournament. Their roster just isn't built to compete with how stacked the West is, and fit matters. I just mentioned it with the Lakers. The Lakers had an abysmal season, and they were still 3 games up on the Kings. The ceiling for the Kings is about 37 and 45, but they probably won't hit that ceiling. The rest of the league got better, and the Kings roughly stayed the same. A floor of about 28 and 54, but I think they'll go 31 and 51. That does it for our rankings of every single division in the NBA. If I'm right, the West should look something like this. This season should be fun. The league has never been more stacked in both conferences. There are multiple title threats and really no easy outs in the playoffs. Even some of the play-in teams can really make some noise. This was a lot of fun making, and I appreciate you for watching. Thank you so much, and I will catch you next week.